The wind carried the scent of gunpowder and betrayal as Olivia Norwood stepped off the stagecoach onto the dusty streets of Copper Creek, Montana Territory. 1878. Eyes followed her, narrowed with suspicion and judgment, as she clutched her carpet bag tighter against her chest. She'd spent 3 years running from her past, and now she was walking straight back into its waiting arms. Whispers trailed her like shadows as she made her way toward the only boarding house in town, her spine straight despite the weight of 1,000 unspoken accusations. "That's her," a woman's voice hissed. "Olivia Norwood, the one whose father robbed half the town blind before fleeing with the money, left her to face the consequences," another replied. "Some say she was in on it." Olivia kept her gaze fixed forward. She'd heard worse in the years since her father disappeared with the town's savings. The scandal had driven her away from Copper Creek at 20 years old, forcing her to build a life elsewhere. Now, at 23, she'd returned not to clear her name, but to bury the last person who had believed in her innocence, her grandmother. The boarding house appeared largely unchanged, its weathered sign creaking in the wind. Olivia paused at the entrance, summoning courage before pushing open the door. The woman behind the counter looked up, recognition dawning in her eyes followed quickly by disapproval. "Mrs. Holloway," Olivia greeted, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'd like a room, please." The older woman's mouth pinched tight. "You've got nerve coming back here, girl. I've come to settle my grandmother's affairs," Olivia replied. "Nothing more." "Nothing in this town belongs to you or your family anymore," Mrs. Holloway said, but she reached for a key nonetheless. "Room 4. $2 a night, in advance." Olivia placed the money on the counter, the coins clinking against the wood. "Thank you." As she climbed the stairs to her room, the weight of the town's hostility pressed against her shoulders. Her grandmother's letter had arrived 3 weeks ago, her final request for Olivia to return, to sell the small house that remained in her name, and perhaps find some peace. Olivia doubted peace was possible in Copper Creek, but she couldn't deny her grandmother's last wish. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the main street. Olivia placed her bag on the bed and moved to the window, watching the town bustling below. Her gaze caught on a tall figure emerging from the general store across the street. Even from a distance, there was something commanding about his presence: broad shoulders, a confident stride, and a Stetson pulled low over his face. A knock at her door startled her from her observations. When she opened it, she found herself facing the town sheriff, a man who had once been her father's friend. "Sheriff Reynolds," she acknowledged. "Miss Norwood," he replied, his face unreadable. "Word travels fast. I heard you were back. For my grandmother's funeral and to settle her estate." "Nothing more. Your grandmother was a good woman, one of the few who stood by you." His expression softened momentarily. "Funeral's tomorrow at noon. As for the estate, you should know there are complications." "What complications?" "Your father's debts. Some folks believe they have a claim to what little your grandmother left." Olivia's stomach tightened. "The house was in her name. It has nothing to do with my father. In the eyes of the law, perhaps, but in a town with memories like this one." He left the sentence unfinished. "Just watch yourself. Not everyone believes in forgiveness." After the sheriff left, Olivia sank onto the bed. She'd known returning would be difficult, but she hadn't anticipated how the mere mention of her father's crimes could still threaten what little she had left. Tomorrow, she would bury her grandmother. Then she would face whatever came next. Dawn broke with harsh clarity over Copper Creek. Olivia dressed in her black morning gown, the same one she'd worn when she left town 3 years ago, when the scandal had still been fresh and the accusations relentless. She pinned her auburn hair into a tight bun and steeled herself for the day ahead. The funeral was a small affair. Most attendees kept their distance, paying respects to her grandmother while deliberately avoiding Olivia's gaze. She stood alone by the graveside, watching as they lowered the simple pine coffin into the ground. The preacher's words washed over her, bringing little comfort. As the last shovelful of dirt covered the grave, the mourners dispersed quickly, leaving Olivia alone with her grief. She knelt beside the fresh mound, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers at the headstone. "I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner," she whispered. "I hope you can forgive me." She understood why you stayed away. The deep voice startled her. Olivia turned to find the man she'd spotted from her window the previous day. Up close, he was even more imposing, tall, with shoulders broadened by years of hard work and eyes the color of storm clouds. His face was weathered but handsome, with a strong jaw dusted with stubble. He removed his hat respectfully, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his temples. "Thomas O'Malley," he introduced himself. "I worked your grandmother's land these past 2 years." Olivia rose to her feet, brushing dirt from her skirts. "You knew my grandmother well. She was a fine woman, kind when others weren't." His gaze was direct, assessing. "She spoke of you often." "All good things, I hope," Olivia replied, attempting a small smile. "She believed in you. Said you were nothing like your father." The mention of her father brought reality crashing back. "Few others share that opinion." "People believe what's easiest," Thomas replied. "Judgment comes quicker than understanding." There was something in his tone that suggested personal experience. Before Olivia could respond, Sheriff Reynolds approached, his expression grim. "Miss Norwood, there's a matter we need to discuss regarding your grandmother's property," he said. "The bank has filed a lien against it, claiming your father's debts." Olivia's heart sank. "That's impossible. The house and land were hers alone." "I'm afraid it's not that simple," the sheriff replied. "Your father used the property as collateral for a loan before he disappeared. The bank's been patient out of respect for your grandmother, but now—" He trailed off, his implication clear. "How long do I have?" Olivia asked, her voice tight. 2 weeks to settle the debt or the property goes to auction." After the sheriff left, Olivia remained motionless, staring at her grandmother's grave. The injustice of it burned in her chest, that her father's crimes continued to haunt her, continued to take what little she had left. "How much is the debt?" Thomas asked quietly. "I don't know," Olivia admitted, "but whatever it is, I doubt I have enough." "Your grandmother hired me to work the small farm behind her house," Thomas said. "There's a decent crop ready for harvest. It might help." "Why would you help me?" Olivia asked, suspicion edging her voice. "You don't know me." "I know enough," he replied simply. "Your grandmother saw worth in you. That's good enough for me." His offer hung between them, unexpected kindness in a town that had offered her nothing but scorn. Olivia studied him, searching for ulterior motives in his expression, but finding only straightforward honesty. "Thank you, Mr. O'Malley," she finally said. "I'll consider it." The walk to her grandmother's house was both familiar and strange. Copper Creek had changed little in 3 years. The same storefronts lined the main street, the same church steeple pierced the sky. Yet everything felt different, viewed through eyes that had seen more of the world, had learned survival in places far from this mountain valley. The small, whitewashed house sat on the edge of town, its garden overgrown but still showing signs of her grandmother's careful tending. A modest barn and a few acres of farmland stretched behind it. Olivia's throat tightened as she approached the front porch, memories washing over her of summer evenings spent shelling peas, of her grandmother's quiet strength after Olivia's mother died, of the refuge this place had been when the rest of town turned against her. The key turned easily in the lock. Inside, everything remained exactly as she remembered: the worn but polished furniture, the faded quilt draped over the rocking chair, the shelf of books her grandmother had collected over a lifetime. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Olivia moved through the room slowly, trailing her fingers over familiar surfaces, each touch bringing back memories both comforting and painful. In her grandmother's bedroom, she found a small wooden box on the dresser with her name written on a scrap of paper attached to the lid. Inside lay a letter, along with a simple gold locket that had belonged to Olivia's mother. With trembling fingers, she unfolded the letter and read her grandmother's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Olivia, if you are reading this, I have gone to join your grandfather and your mother. Do not grieve too deeply. I have lived a good life, though I regret that its final years were shadowed by your father's actions and the pain they brought to you. I have always believed in your innocence, my darling girl. Your heart is too good, too honest for the deception your father practiced. I understand why you felt you needed to leave Copper Creek, but I hope one day you might find your way back, not to face judgment, but to reclaim what is rightfully yours: peace. There is money sewn into the lining of my mattress, not much, but perhaps enough to help you make a new start, either here or elsewhere. Use it wisely. Remember that you are not defined by your father's sins. You are Olivia, my brave granddaughter who has always faced life with courage and kindness, even when those qualities were not returned to you. With all my love." Grandmother tears blurred Olivia's vision as she finished reading. She clutched the letter to her chest, her grandmother's faith in her a balm to her wounded spirit. After several moments, she carefully folded the letter and moved to the bed, finding the stitches that concealed her grandmother's secret savings. The amount was modest, just over $200, but represented years of careful economy. It wouldn't be enough to pay off whatever debt her father had incurred, but it might buy her time to figure out what to do next. As evening approached, Olivia made her way back to the boarding house, her mind whirling with possibilities and concerns. She was so preoccupied that she nearly collided with Thomas O'Malley as she rounded the corner near the general store. "Miss Norwood," he said, steadying her with a gentle hand on her arm. "I was hoping to find you." "Mr. O'Malley," she acknowledged, suddenly aware of the curious glances from passers-by. Even this simple interaction would fuel gossip in a town like Copper Creek. "I've been to the bank," he continued, lowering his voice. "Your father's debt stands at $800. Olivia's heart sank. "That's a considerable sum." "It is," he agreed, "but the wheat crop on your grandmother's land is nearly ready for harvest. With good weather, it could bring in close to half that amount." Hope flickered briefly, only to be extinguished by reality. "Even if that's true, it wouldn't be enough, and I doubt the bank will wait for the harvest." "Perhaps not," Thomas said, "but I might have a solution." "Would you join me for dinner at the hotel restaurant? We could discuss it properly." The invitation surprised her. Dining publicly with a man she barely knew would certainly set tongues wagging, but Olivia found herself caring less about the town's opinion than she might have expected. "That would be acceptable," she replied. "Thank you." The hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in Copper Creek, which wasn't saying much by the standards of larger cities. Still, the tables were covered with clean linens, and the food was reputed to be good. Conversation halted briefly when Olivia entered with Thomas, before resuming with increased intensity. She kept her head high, refusing to acknowledge the stares. Once seated in a corner table that afforded some privacy, Thomas ordered for them both, a courtesy that Olivia found oddly comforting rather than presumptuous. "You mentioned a solution," she prompted once the waiter had left. "I did." Thomas leaned forward slightly. There's a cattle buyer coming through next week. He's looking to purchase stock for a ranch in Wyoming territory. I know he pays fair prices, and I have 10 head of prime cattle I could sell." Olivia stared at him. "You would sell your cattle to help pay my father's debt. Why?" "Your grandmother gave me a chance when others wouldn't," he replied, his expression serious. "I owe her." "What do you mean?" Thomas was silent for a moment, considering his words. "I came to Copper Creek 2 years ago with nothing but my horse and the clothes on my back. I'd been riding with a cattle outfit that fell apart after a bad winter. Your grandmother needed help with her land, and she hired me despite knowing nothing about me." His eyes met hers directly. "People have histories, Miss Norwood. Some of us understand what it means to be judged by them." There was a story there, Olivia sensed, something in his past that had taught him the same hard lessons she had learned. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. O'Malley, truly, but I can't accept such charity." "It's not charity," he insisted. "Consider it a business arrangement. I help you clear the debt, and in return, I continue working your grandmother's land with a fair share of the profits." The waiter returned with their meals, interrupting the conversation. Olivia used the moment to consider Thomas's proposal. It was generous, certainly more than she'd expected from anyone in Copper Creek. Yet pride made her hesitate. "Why not simply buy the property yourself when it goes to auction?" she asked once they were alone again. "It would be simpler." A flash of something anger perhaps crossed his face. "Because that would be taking advantage of your misfortune, and because I believe your grandmother would have wanted you to keep her home." His honesty disarmed her. In 3 years of fending for herself, Olivia had learned to be wary of men offering help. Such assistance typically came with expectations she wasn't willing to meet. Yet Thomas O'Malley seemed different, his offer straightforward and without hidden motives. "I need time to consider," she finally said. "Of course." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "But time is one luxury we don't have much of." Their meal continued with conversation that carefully avoided the topics of her father's crimes or the town's judgment. Instead, Thomas spoke of the land, of the improvements he'd made to her grandmother's modest farm, and of his plans for increasing its productivity. Olivia found herself genuinely interested, asking questions about crops and irrigation that made him look at her with new appreciation. "You know something of farming," he observed. "My grandmother taught me," Olivia replied. "Before everything happened, I helped her with the garden and the chickens. I always enjoyed watching things grow." "It's honest work," Thomas said. "The land doesn't care about rumors or reputations. It responds to effort and care." As they finished their meal, Olivia became aware of a woman staring pointedly at their table from across the room. The hostility in her gaze was unmistakable. "Someone you know?" Olivia asked, nodding discreetly in the woman's direction. Thomas glanced over and his expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Melissa Thornton, daughter of the bank manager. She doesn't appear pleased to see you dining with me." "Miss Thornton has expectations that I've never encouraged," he replied carefully. "Her father has been trying to arrange a match between us since I arrived in town." "I see." Olivia's tone was neutral, though something that felt suspiciously like jealousy flickered in her chest. "She's very beautiful." "Beauty isn't everything," Thomas said, his gaze fixed on Olivia with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. Their walk back to the boarding house was accompanied by the first stars appearing in the deepening twilight. The evening air carried the scent of pine from the surrounding mountains, a familiar fragrance that brought back memories of happier times in Copper Creek. "Thank you for dinner," Olivia said as they reached the boarding house porch, "and for your generous offer. I promise to give you an answer soon." "I'll come by your grandmother's house tomorrow," Thomas replied. We can look over the wheat crop together, see what we're working with." He tipped his hat and turned to leave, then paused. "Miss Norwood, for what it's worth, not everyone in town believes the worst about you. Your grandmother made sure of that." His words stayed with her as she climbed the stairs to her room, a small comfort against the weight of the day's events. Tomorrow, she would begin the process of sorting through her grandmother's belongings, deciding what to keep and what to sell. And she would consider Thomas O'Malley's unexpected offer of partnership. Dawn found Olivia already at her grandmother's house, a pot of coffee brewing on the stove, as she began the melancholy task of going through her grandmother's possessions. Each drawer revealed small treasures: a pressed flower, a child's drawing Olivia had made years ago, carefully preserved letters from her grandfather during his time away in the Civil War. In the attic, she discovered a trunk containing her mother's dresses that had once been fashionable, a small jewelry box with modest pieces, and a bundle of love letters from her father that dated back to when they had first courted. Olivia hesitated before reading them, uncertain if she wanted to be reminded of the man her father had once been, before greed corrupted him. Curiosity won out. The letters revealed a passionate, articulate man who had genuinely loved her mother. It was difficult to reconcile this version of her father with the man who had embezzled the town's savings and fled in the night, leaving his daughter to face the consequences. A knock at the door interrupted her reflections. She found Thomas on the porch, hat in hand, his expression concerned. "You've been crying," he observed. Olivia touched her cheek, surprised to find it damp. "Just memories. Please come in." He followed her into the kitchen, accepting the cup of coffee she offered. "I hope I'm not intruding on your grief." "No," she assured him. "Actually, the company is welcome. Going through her things alone is harder than I expected." Thomas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "After my mother died, my father couldn't bear to touch her belongings. They sat untouched for years, like a shrine to her memory." "You still have family somewhere?" Olivia asked, realizing how little she knew about this man who was offering her such significant help. A shadow crossed his face. "Not anymore. My father passed 5 years ago. There was nothing left for me in Texas after that. I'm sorry." "Life happens as it will," he replied with a shrug that didn't quite hide his own grief. "We endure." They finished their coffee in companionable silence before Thomas suggested they examine the wheat field. Outside, the morning sun illuminated the golden waves of grain stretching behind the house. "Your grandmother was proud of this crop," Thomas said as they walked between the rows. "Said it was the best she'd seen in years." "She never mentioned it in her letters," Olivia remarked. "Or you, for that matter." Thomas smiled slightly. "Perhaps she thought you had enough to worry about without her adding to your burdens. Or perhaps she was playing matchmaker from beyond the grave," Olivia said, the words escaping before she could consider them. She felt her cheeks flush. "I'm sorry, that was presumptuous." To her relief, Thomas laughed, a warm, rich sound that transformed his serious face. "Your grandmother was a formidable woman. I wouldn't put it past her." The rest of the morning was spent assessing the wheat crop and discussing harvest plans. Thomas's knowledge impressed Olivia. He spoke with the confidence of someone who understood the land and its rhythms. "With good weather, we could begin harvesting next week," he explained. "I've arranged for 2 men from town to help. It's not a large crop, but it's quality wheat. Should fetch a good price." "And your cattle?" Olivia asked. "You're still willing to sell them?" "I am," he confirmed. "Between the wheat and the cattle, we should be able to clear the debt with some to spare." Olivia hesitated, then made her decision. "Very well, Mr. O'Malley. I accept your proposal. We'll work together to save my grandmother's property." The relief in his eyes was evident. "You won't regret it, Miss Norwood." "Olivia," she corrected him. If we're to be business partners, you should use my given name. Thomas, then, he replied with a smile that reached his eyes. As they walked back toward the house, Olivia spotted a figure approaching on horseback. Even from a distance, she recognized Melissa Thornton, her golden hair gleaming in the sunlight. The woman reined in her horse at the edge of the property, her expression hardening when she saw Olivia and Thomas together. "Thomas," Melissa called, her voice carrying across the yard. "Father was hoping you might join us for dinner tonight." "I'm afraid I can't, Miss Thornton," Thomas replied politely. "Miss Norwood and I have business matters to discuss." Melissa's gaze shifted to Olivia, cold assessment in her blue eyes. "Business? Is that what they're calling it now?" "Miss Thornton," Thomas's voice took on an edge Olivia hadn't heard before. "Miss Norwood deserves your respect." "Does she?" Melissa's laugh was brittle. "The daughter of a thief. Thomas, surely you know what they say about her in town, how she must have known what her father was planning. How she disappeared right after he did, probably with her share of the money." Olivia stepped forward, anger burning through her usual caution. "I left because this town made it impossible to stay. I lost everything when my father fled, my reputation, my future, my home. I didn't take a penny of stolen money." "So you say," Melissa replied dismissively, "but why come back now? There's nothing for you here except judgment." "That's enough," Thomas said firmly. "Please give your father my regrets about dinner." Melissa's expression darkened. "You're making a mistake, Thomas. My father won't look kindly on you associating with her kind." With that, she wheeled her horse around and galloped away, dust rising in her wake. Thomas turned to Olivia, apology in his eyes. "I'm sorry for that. Miss Thornton can be honest." Olivia supplied, her voice tight. "She only said what everyone in town thinks." "Not everyone," Thomas insisted. "And those who judge without knowing the full story aren't worth your concern." "Easy to say when you're not the one being judged," Olivia replied, then immediately regretted her sharp tone. "I'm sorry, that wasn't fair." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "You're right, it's not the same, but I understand more than you might think." Before he could elaborate, the distant sound of a wagon approaching drew their attention. Sheriff Reynolds appeared, driving a small buggy down the dirt road leading to the house. "Seems like a popular morning for visitors," Olivia remarked, trying to lighten the mood. The sheriff nodded in greeting as he pulled up. "Miss Norwood, O'Malley." "Sheriff," Thomas acknowledged. "What brings you out this way?" "Business with Miss Norwood," Reynolds replied, climbing down from the buggy. "There's been a development regarding your father's debt." Olivia's heart raced. "What kind of development?" "Mr. Thornton at the bank has decided to accelerate the timeline. He's demanding payment by the end of the week, or he'll proceed with foreclosure." "That's not what you told me at the funeral," Olivia protested. "You said I had 2 weeks." "I know what I said," the sheriff replied, looking uncomfortable. "Thornton changed his mind, says he's been patient long enough." Thomas's expression darkened. "This have anything to do with his daughter?" Reynolds glanced between them. "I wouldn't know about that." "I'm just delivering the message." "It's not right," Thomas insisted. "The crop is nearly ready for harvest." "Another few days, take it up with Thornton," Reynolds interrupted. "I'm just doing my job." He turned to Olivia. "I'm sorry, Miss Norwood, I know this isn't fair." After the sheriff departed, Olivia sank onto the porch steps, the unfairness of it all threatening to overwhelm her. "He's doing this because of us, isn't he? Because his daughter saw us together." Thomas paced the yard, anger evident in every line of his body. "Thornton's been trying to pressure me into courting Melissa for months. Thinks my land would make a nice addition to his holdings if we were to marry." "Your land?" "The property adjacent to your grandmother's," Thomas explained. I purchased it last year with the money I saved working for your grandmother and doing odd jobs around town. And now he's using my situation to punish you for rejecting his daughter, Olivia said, understanding dawning. I'm sorry to have caused you trouble. Thomas stopped pacing to look at her directly. You've caused nothing. This is Thornton's doing, not yours. He sat beside her on the steps, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. We'll find a way, Olivia, I promise you that. His confidence should have seemed naive, but instead, Olivia found it steadying. The cattle buyer you mentioned, when is he due to arrive? Not until next week, Thomas replied. But I know other ranchers who might be interested. I'll ride out today, see what I can arrange. And I'll go into town, try to reason with Mr. Thornton, Olivia decided. Perhaps if I appeal to his better nature. Thornton doesn't have a better nature, Thomas interrupted. But it's worth trying. Just be careful. He's not a man used to being denied what he wants. They parted ways with a plan to meet again that evening. As Thomas rode off toward the neighboring ranches, Olivia prepared herself to face the man who held her grandmother's property and her future in his hands. Copper Creek's bank occupied an imposing brick building on the main street, its polished windows and heavy oak door designed to inspire confidence in its stability. Olivia straightened her spine as she entered, ignoring the stares of the clerk and the few customers conducting their business. I'd like to speak with Mr. Thornton, please, she told the clerk, keeping her voice steady and polite. The young man looked uncertain. Do you have an appointment, Miss Norwood? No, but it's regarding my grandmother's property. I understand there's some urgency to the matter. After a moment's hesitation, the clerk disappeared through a door behind the counter, returning shortly to usher Olivia into a well-appointed office. Walter Thornton sat behind a massive desk, his thinning hair slicked back from a high forehead, his eyes calculating as she entered. Miss Norwood, he greeted, not rising from his chair. I understand you wish to discuss your father's debt. Olivia remained standing, refusing the chair he gestured toward. I wish to discuss your sudden change of terms, Mr. Thornton. Sheriff Reynolds initially informed me I had 2 weeks to settle the debt. Business considerations sometimes necessitate adjustments, Thornton replied smoothly. The bank has been exceptionally patient, given the circumstances. The wheat crop on my grandmother's land will be ready for harvest within days, Olivia explained. I'm requesting you honor the original timeline, which would allow me to use the proceeds to help settle the debt. Thornton leaned back in his chair, studying her with cold eyes. You've been seen in the company of Thomas O'Malley, an interesting choice of association given your precarious situation. Mr. O'Malley worked for my grandmother. He's been kind enough to assist me during this difficult time. Kindness, is it? Thornton's smile didn't reach his eyes. O'Malley is a man with his own secrets, Miss Norwood. You might want to inquire about his past before you place too much trust in him. The implication stirred both curiosity and defensive anger in Olivia. My business arrangements are my own concern, Mr. Thornton. I'm here to discuss the debt against my grandmother's property. Very well, Thornton picked up a pen, tapping it against his desk. I might be persuaded to extend the deadline under certain conditions. What conditions? Your public disassociation from O'Malley, for one, Thornton stated bluntly. It's unseemly for a young woman in your position to be spending time unchaperoned with a man of questionable character. Olivia stiffened. That's an unreasonable demand. Is it? Thornton raised an eyebrow. Consider your options carefully, Miss Norwood. You have few friends in Copper Creek. I could be one of them, if you were wise enough to accept guidance. The threat beneath his words was unmistakable. Olivia held his gaze, refusing to be intimidated despite the rapid beating of her heart. I'll have your money by the end of the week, Mr. Thornton. All of it. And then you'll have no further claim on my grandmother's property or any right to dictate my associations." Thornton's expression hardened. Bold words from a woman with your history. Remember, the apple seldom falls far from the tree. Your father made promises he couldn't keep too. The comparison stung, but Olivia maintained her composure. "Good day, Mr. Thornton." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her at the door. "One more thing, Miss Norwood. Should you fail to meet the deadline, I'll ensure that not only do you lose the property, but that everyone in the territory knows exactly what kind of woman you are, your father's daughter in every way." Anger flashed through her, white hot. "Is that how you see justice, Mr. Thornton? Punishing a daughter for her father's crimes? I see it as protecting this town from another Norwood deception," he replied coldly. "Friday, noon, not a minute later." Olivia left the bank with her head high, though inside she trembled with rage and fear. Thornton's threat was clear: not just the loss of her grandmother's property, but the destruction of any chance she might have to rebuild her life in Copper Creek. And his insinuations about Thomas troubled her. What secrets might he be hiding? What had Thornton meant by questionable character? As she walked back toward her grandmother's house, she noticed the stares and whispers following her progress. Copper Creek had not forgotten, nor forgiven. She wondered if it ever would, no matter what she did or how she tried to prove herself. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains when Thomas returned. Olivia had spent the afternoon continuing to sort through her grandmother's belongings, finding comfort in the simple, practical task. She heard the approach of his horse and met him on the porch, immediately noting the weariness in his posture. "No luck?" she asked, already knowing the answer from his expression. Thomas dismounted, removing his hat and running a hand through his dark hair. "Some interest, but no one has the cash on hand to make an immediate purchase. Most offered credit or promised payment after they sell their own stock. And Thornton won't accept promises," Olivia said with a sigh. "He made that quite clear. You spoke with him." Olivia nodded, then related her conversation with the banker, omitting only his comments about Thomas's character. "He's determined to foreclose, Thomas. I think he wants the property for himself." "It's not just the property he wants," Thomas replied grimly. "It's control. Thornton's been buying up land all around the valley for the past year. Your grandmother refused to sell to him, no matter how much he offered. And now he sees his chance," Olivia concluded, "with me desperate and the debt as leverage." They moved inside as twilight deepened. Thomas built a fire in the small hearth, while Olivia prepared a simple meal from the provisions in her grandmother's pantry. The domesticity of the scene struck her as they sat at the kitchen table. How easy it was to fall into comfortable routines with this man she barely knew. "Thornton said something today," she began carefully, watching Thomas's face, "about you having secrets, about your character being questionable." Thomas's expression closed, a wariness entering his eyes. "Did he now?" he implied. "I shouldn't trust you." Olivia held his gaze steadily. "If we're to be partners in this, I need honesty between us." For a long moment, Thomas was silent, staring into the depths of his coffee cup as if searching for words. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, tinged with shame and old anger. "Before I came to Copper Creek, I rode with a cattle outfit in Texas. The foreman was a man named Jackson Reeves. He was ruthless, didn't care much about property lines or whose cattle we drove to market." Thomas looked up, meeting her eyes directly. "I didn't realize at first what was happening. By the time I understood we were essentially rustling cattle, I was in too deep." "What happened?" Olivia asked softly. "A rancher caught us on his land. There was a shootout. Reeves killed the man, claimed it was self-defense." Thomas's hands tightened around his cup. I knew better, but I was young and scared. I testified to what Reeves told me to say at the inquest. The rancher's family lost everything, their patriarch, their reputation, when Reeves spread rumors that he'd been rustling, eventually, their ranch. The weight of his confession hung in the air between them. Olivia could see the regret etched in every line of his face. After that, I couldn't stay. Couldn't live with what I'd done, Thomas continued. I drifted north, working honest jobs, trying to build something different. When I came to Copper Creek, your grandmother gave me a chance when no one else would. She never asked about my past, just judged me on the work I did for her. And Thornton, how does he know? He has business connections in Texas. Heard rumors, I suppose. He's held it over my head since I arrived, implying he could expose me if I didn't cooperate with his plans. Including his plans for you and his daughter, Olivia surmised. Thomas nodded. Melissa's a pretty girl, and the match would be advantageous for Thornton. He'd gain control of my land and the respectability of having his daughter married to a property owner. But not for you. No, Thomas agreed, a flicker of something in his eyes as they met hers. Not for me. Olivia considered his confession, turning it over in her mind. Part of her, the cautious part that had learned hard lessons about trust, warned that this was too convenient, too similar to her own circumstances. Yet the shame and regret in his eyes seemed genuine. "Thank you for telling me the truth," she finally said. "It can't have been easy." "Does it change things between us?" he asked, vulnerability evident in the question. Olivia thought about the judgments she'd faced, the assumptions made about her character based on her father's actions. "We all have pasts we wish we could change, Thomas. What matters is who we choose to be now." The relief in his expression was palpable. "Your grandmother said something similar once, that we're not bound by our mistakes if we're willing to learn from them." "She was a wise woman," Olivia said, smiling despite the heaviness of their conversation. "She was," Thomas agreed, then hesitated before adding. "She also told me once that you were the strongest person she'd ever known, that you'd faced the town's judgment with more courage than most men show facing a loaded gun." The compliment warmed Olivia, both for its content and for the knowledge that her grandmother had spoken of her with pride. "I don't feel very strong at the moment," she admitted. Facing Thornton today, seeing the satisfaction in his eyes when he delivered his ultimatum, I wanted to run again. To leave Copper Creek and never look back. "But you didn't," Thomas pointed out. "You're still here, still fighting." "For now," Olivia replied. "But without a miracle, I'll lose everything by Friday noon." Thomas was quiet for a moment, considering. There might be another option. "It's not ideal, but it could buy us time. I'm listening. I have some savings. Not enough to clear the debt entirely, but perhaps enough to make a partial payment. If we could convince Thornton to accept it as good faith." "He made it clear he expects full payment," Olivia said doubtfully. "True, but a public offer might force his hand. Thornton cares about his reputation in town. If we make the offer in front of witnesses, make it known that we're working to settle the debt honorably." "He'd look unreasonable if he refused," Olivia realized, hope flickering to life. "It might work. It's worth trying," Thomas agreed. "We can approach him tomorrow at the bank when it's busiest." They spent the remainder of the evening refining their plan, the shared purpose creating a bond between them that transcended their brief acquaintance. As the hour grew late, Thomas rose to leave but hesitated at the door. "You shouldn't stay here alone," he said. "Not with Thornton making threats. The boarding house would be safer." "This is my home now," Olivia replied firmly. "I won't be driven from it by fear." Thomas studied her, concern evident in his expression. "At least let me stay on the property. I can sleep in the barn. It would ease my mind to know you're not completely alone out here." The offer touched her. In the years since her father's betrayal, few people had shown such concern for her welfare. "That's very kind, but unnecessary. I'll be fine." "Humor me," he insisted gently. "Consider it payment for dinner." Olivia found herself smiling at his persistence. "Very well. But at least take a proper bedroll from the house. I won't have you sleeping on hay like a vagrant when I have perfectly good blankets." As she gathered bedding for him, Olivia was struck by how quickly Thomas O'Malley had become important to her. His support, his understanding of what it meant to live under the shadow of past mistakes, these things created a connection she hadn't expected to find in Copper Creek. Of all places, morning brought renewed determination. After a quick breakfast, Olivia changed into her best dress, a modest blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, and pinned her hair in a style that spoke of respectability rather than fashion. Appearances mattered in what they were about to attempt. Thomas waited for her on the porch, similarly attired in his best shirt and a clean vest, his usually unruly hair tamed with water. The sight of him tall and handsome in the morning light caused a flutter in Olivia's chest that had nothing to do with their impending confrontation with Thornton. "You look lovely," he said simply, offering his arm. "Thank you," she replied, taking it with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "Shall we?" They rode into town together, Olivia seated side saddle on her grandmother's aging mare while Thomas rode his own sturdy gelding. The formality of their appearance drew attention as they made their way down the main street toward the bank. As Thomas had predicted, the bank was busy with the usual morning transactions. Heads turned as they entered, conversations pausing as people recognized the unlikely pair. Olivia held her head high, ignoring the stares as she approached the clerk's counter. "We'd like to speak with Mr. Thornton, please," she requested, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet of the room. The clerk glanced nervously at the customers watching the exchange. "I'm afraid Mr. Thornton is quite busy this morning, Miss Norwood." "Then we'll wait," Thomas stated firmly, positioning himself beside Olivia in a show of solidarity. "Our business is important." Before the clerk could respond, the door to Thornton's office opened, revealing the banker himself. His expression darkened at the sight of them, though he quickly masked it with a professional smile. "Miss Norwood, Mr. O'Malley, this is unexpected. We've come to discuss the debt on my grandmother's property," Olivia said clearly, aware of the interested observers. "Mr. O'Malley and I would like to make a partial payment and arrange terms for the remainder." Thornton's smile became strained. "Perhaps we should discuss this in my office." "I'm comfortable discussing it here," Olivia replied, matching his tone of forced pleasantness. "After all, it's a simple business transaction." A muscle twitched in Thornton's jaw. "Very well. The bank requires full payment by Friday noon, as previously stated." Thomas stepped forward, removing an envelope from his vest pocket. "We're prepared to make a payment of $300 today, with the remaining amount to be paid within 30 days upon completion of the harvest and cattle sale." Murmurs ran through the assembled customers. $300 was a significant sum, and the offer of full payment within a reasonable time frame was more than fair by any standard. Thornton's eyes narrowed. The terms were quite clear: full payment or foreclosure. "Seems like a reasonable offer to me, Walter," came a voice from the crowd. Sheriff Reynolds stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "The lady's trying to honor her obligations. That's more than some would do." "This is a private matter between the bank and Miss Norwood," Thornton replied stiffly. "Doesn't seem so private, you discussing it out here in front of half the town," another man commented, drawing nods from several others. Olivia recognized the shift in the room, the first hint of public opinion turning in her favor. Thornton recognized it too, his expression calculating as he assessed the situation. "The bank has obligations to its depositors," he said smoothly. "We can't simply extend credit based on promises." "My grandmother never broke a promise in her life," Olivia replied, emotion threading through her voice. "And neither will I. The money is here, Mr. Thornton. Good faith from me and fair treatment from you is all I'm asking." A tense silence followed her words. Thornton looked around the room, noting the expectant faces of his customers, many of whom were prominent citizens of Copper Creek. The political calculation was evident in his expression, the risk of appearing unreasonable against the satisfaction of crushing Olivia's hopes. "The bank could consider a partial payment," he finally conceded, though his eyes remained cold, "provided certain additional conditions are met." "What conditions?" Thomas asked warily. "Collateral," Thornton replied. "Something of value to secure the remainder of the debt." "The property itself is the collateral," Olivia pointed out. "Additional collateral," Thornton clarified. "Something personal." His gaze shifted to Thomas. "Perhaps Mr. O'Malley would be willing to offer his own property as security since he seems so invested in your situation." The trap was cleverly laid. If Thomas refused, it would appear he didn't truly believe in Olivia's ability to repay the debt. If he agreed, he risked losing everything he'd worked for if anything went wrong with their plan. Olivia opened her mouth to refuse on Thomas's behalf, but he spoke first. "Done," Thomas said firmly. "My deed against the remainder of Miss Norwood's debt." Thornton couldn't quite hide his satisfaction. "Very well. We have an agreement. $300 today with the remainder due in 30 days, secured by Mr. O'Malley's property." After signing the necessary documents, they emerged from the bank into the bright sunlight of mid-morning. Olivia turned to Thomas, distress evident in her expression. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly. "Your land is just land," he interrupted. "It can be replaced." "It's your future, Thomas. Everything you've worked for." "Not everything," he replied, his gaze holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Some things are worth the risk." Before she could respond, a commotion further down the street caught their attention. A group of riders had entered town, dust rising behind them as they approached the main thoroughfare. "The cattle buyer," Thomas identified, recognition dawning. "He's early." Hope surged through Olivia. "This could be our chance, if he's willing to buy your cattle now." "Let's find out," Thomas said, taking her hand and leading her toward the newcomers. The cattle buyer, a barrel-chested man named Harrington, was dismounting in front of the hotel when they reached him. Thomas approached with confident strides, extending his hand in greeting. "Mr. Harrington." "Thomas O'Malley. Wasn't expecting you until next week." "O'Malley," Harrington acknowledged, shaking his hand. "Business in Billings wrapped up early. Thought I'd get a jump on things here." "Fortunate timing," Thomas replied. "I was hoping to discuss the cattle I mentioned in my letter." Harrington's gaze shifted to Olivia, curious. Thomas quickly made the introduction. "Miss Olivia Norwood. The cattle are on her grandmother's property where I've been working." "Madam," Harrington tipped his hat politely. "Sorry to hear about your grandmother, fine woman by all accounts." "Thank you, Mr. Harrington," Olivia replied. "She spoke highly of your fair dealings in the past." "Always tried to be fair," Harrington agreed. "Now, about these cattle, O'Malley. You said 10 head of prime stock. Ready for inspection whenever you are," Thomas confirmed. "Though I should mention we're under some time constraints. If you're interested, we'd need to conclude the sale rather quickly." Harrington raised an eyebrow. "How quickly?" "Within the week, if possible." The cattle buyer scratched his beard thoughtfully. "I can take a look this afternoon. If they're as good as you claim, we might be able to work something out." Relief washed through Olivia. This unexpected development might be exactly what they needed to secure their position against Thornton's machinations. That afternoon, Thomas and Olivia accompanied Harrington to inspect the cattle. The buyer moved among the animals with practiced eyes, checking teeth, flanks, and overall condition while Thomas stood by, answering questions about feed and care. "Fine animals," Harrington finally declared. "You've done well with them, O'Malley. I can offer $400 for the lot," Thomas frowned. "They're worth at least $550, Harrington. Prime beef, well-fed, disease-free." $475, Harrington countered. "That's as high as I can go, considering I'm paying cash on the spot." Thomas glanced at Olivia, a silent question in his eyes. The amount, combined with the wheat harvest's potential value and their partial payment, would be enough to clear the debt with a small margin to spare. She gave a slight nod. "We have a deal," Thomas told Harrington, extending his hand. Harrington produced the cash from a secure pouch, counting out the bills carefully. "I'll arrange to have them driven north with the rest of my purchases next week. Until then, keep feeding them as you have been." As they walked back toward the house, the money safely tucked into Thomas's vest, Olivia felt lighter than she had in days. "This changes everything," she said. "With the wheat harvest and this money, we'll be able to pay Thornton in full before the 30 days are up. And get my land out from under his control," Thomas added, relief evident in his voice. "Though I'd have given it up without regret if necessary." Olivia stopped walking to look at him directly. "Why? Why risk everything for me, for my grandmother's property?" Thomas was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "When I came to Copper Creek, I had nothing but regrets and a determination to start over. Your grandmother saw something in me worth believing in, worth trusting. She gave me a chance when no one else would." His eyes met Olivia's, honest and direct. "You remind me of her, that same strength, that same capacity for seeing beyond appearances to what matters." "I judged you when we first met," Olivia admitted. "Assumed you had motives beyond kindness." "That's just good sense," Thomas replied with a smile. "Especially for a woman alone." "I'm not alone anymore, am I?" The words slipped out before she could consider their implication. Thomas's expression softened. "No, Olivia, you're not alone anymore." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Olivia found herself noticing details about him she hadn't fully appreciated before: the way the corners of his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the strength in his hands, the quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from him even in difficult circumstances. The sound of an approaching rider broke the moment. They turned to see Sheriff Reynolds cantering toward them, his expression grim. Thomas instinctively moved closer to Olivia, his posture tensing. "O'Malley, Miss Norwood," the sheriff called as he approached. "There's trouble in town." "Thought you should know." "What kind of trouble?" Thomas asked. Reynolds dismounted, removing his hat to wipe sweat from his brow. "Thornton's raising a stink about your agreement. Claims he was pressured into it by public opinion, that it isn't binding. He's talking about proceeding with foreclosure as originally planned." "He can't do that," Olivia protested. "We have a signed agreement. We made a payment in good faith." "Law might be on your side," the sheriff acknowledged, "but Thornton has influence with the circuit judge. By the time any legal challenge made its way through the courts, he'd already have possession of the property." Thomas's jaw tightened. "This is about more than the debt. He wants to make an example of us." "Seems that way," Reynolds agreed. "There's more. Thornton's daughter is spreading rumors about the two of you, unsavory implications about your relationship and character. It's turning some folks against you who were starting to come around." Olivia felt cold anger rising within her. "So this is his strategy: destroy our reputations, invalidate our agreement, and take the property anyway." "Pretty much." the sheriff confirmed. "I thought you should be prepared. There's talk of a town meeting tonight to discuss the situation. Thornton's calling it a matter of community concern." "Thank you for the warning," Thomas said, extending his hand to the sheriff. "I've misjudged you, Reynolds. I thought you were firmly in Thornton's pocket." Reynolds shook his head as he accepted the handshake. "I enforce the law, not Thornton's will." "Your grandmother was good to my family when times were hard, Miss Norwood. I haven't forgotten that." After the sheriff departed, Olivia and Thomas retreated to the house to discuss their options. The kitchen, with its familiar scents and worn furniture, felt like a sanctuary against the gathering storm of town politics and prejudice. "We could pay the debt in full now," Olivia suggested. "Between your savings, the cattle money, and what my grandmother left me, we have enough." "That would solve the immediate problem," Thomas agreed, "but it wouldn't address the larger issue. Thornton's determined to break us, Olivia, if not through the debt, then through other means." "Then what do we do? I won't run again, Thomas. I can't." "We stand our ground," he said firmly. "We attend the town meeting tonight. We face Thornton and his accusations directly in front of everyone. And if the town sides with him, they did before when my father—" "This isn't 3 years ago," Thomas reminded her gently. "You're not alone facing them this time." His confidence bolstered her courage. "Then we'll face them together." The town hall was packed that evening, citizens of Copper Creek filling the wooden benches to capacity. Conversations hushed as Olivia and Thomas entered, heads turning to watch their progress down the central aisle. Thornton stood at the front of the room beside Mayor Wilson, his expression smug as he noted their arrival. "Ah, Miss Norwood, Mr. O'Malley," the mayor acknowledged. "We were just about to begin." "Convenient timing," Thomas remarked, his voice carrying through the room. "I trust this meeting will address all sides of the situation fairly." "Of course," Mayor Wilson replied, though he glanced nervously at Thornton. "This is merely an opportunity for the town to discuss matters of community interest, and to ensure that proper moral standards are maintained," Thornton added pointedly. Olivia felt the weight of judging eyes upon her, but kept her head high as she and Thomas took seats near the front. She noted that not all expressions were hostile. Some showed curiosity, others sympathy, and a few even offered small nods of acknowledgement. Mayor Wilson called the meeting to order with a bang of his gavel. "We're gathered tonight to discuss certain matters affecting our community. Mr. Thornton has requested the floor to express concerns regarding the debt situation involving the late Mrs. Harper's property." Thornton rose, adjusting his suit jacket with practiced precision. "Thank you, Mayor Wilson. As many of you know, there has been an ongoing situation regarding the property formerly owned by Mrs. Harper, now apparently claimed by her granddaughter, Miss Norwood." The emphasis on "apparently" was subtle but clear, a suggestion that Olivia's claim might not be legitimate. "The bank holds a substantial lien against this property, placed there by Jacob Norwood before his departure from our community 3 years ago. As a matter of public record, Jacob Norwood embezzled significant funds from many of you present tonight, disappearing without a trace." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Olivia forced herself to remain still, though her hands clenched in her lap. "His daughter, Miss Norwood, also left town immediately following these events," Thornton continued. "An interesting coincidence that raised many questions about her possible involvement." "That's a lie," Olivia stated clearly, rising to her feet. "I left because I had no choice, because this town had already convicted me of crimes I didn't commit." "Please, Miss Norwood," Mayor Wilson intervened. "Mr. Thornton has the floor to spread falsehoods." Thomas demanded, standing beside Olivia. "To publicly slander a woman who's done nothing but try to honor her obligations. The bank has been exceptionally patient, Thornton continued, ignoring the interruption. But patience has its limits. When Miss Norwood returned, I offered clear terms for settling the debt. Today, those terms were renegotiated under what I consider duress. Public pressure in the bank led me to accept a partial payment against my better judgment. A payment of $300 in cash, Thomas pointed out loudly. Hardly a token amount. Order, please, Mayor Wilson called, banging his gavel again. Let Mr. Thornton finish. The bank has a responsibility to its depositors, Thornton continued smoothly, many of whom lost significant sums to Jacob Norwood's scheme. It would be irresponsible of me to extend further credit to his daughter without absolute certainty of repayment. Which is why I offered my property as collateral, Thomas interjected. A fact you're conveniently omitting. Thornton's expression hardened. Yes, Mr. O'Malley has involved himself quite thoroughly in Miss Norwood's affairs, which brings me to my second concern, one of moral propriety. Here it was the attack Olivia had been expecting. She straightened her spine, preparing for the worst. Miss Norwood has been residing alone at her grandmother's property. Mr. O'Malley has been observed spending significant time there, including overnight stays. In a community that values decency and proper behavior, such arrangements are unacceptable. Indignant whispers spread through the crowd. Olivia felt her cheeks burning with humiliation and anger. That's enough. Sheriff Reynolds's voice cut through the murmurs as he stood from his seat at the back. This isn't about community standards. It's about Thornton not getting what he wants. I beg your pardon. Thornton's surprise at the sheriff's intervention was evident. You heard me, Reynolds continued, moving toward the front of the room. Miss Norwood returned to settle her grandmother's affairs honorably. She and O'Malley made a fair offer to settle the debt. But that's not enough for you, is it, Thornton? You want the property, and you want O'Malley to court your daughter, and you're willing to destroy reputations to get your way. Thornton's face flushed with anger. These accusations are outrageous, are they? Thomas asked, addressing the room at large. Mr. Thornton approached me multiple times about courting his daughter. When I declined, he began threatening to reveal details about my past that he believed would damage my standing in this community. The crowd's attention was fully engaged now, the mood shifting as this new perspective emerged. Miss Norwood and I have a business arrangement, Thomas continued. We're working together to harvest her grandmother's wheat crop and sell my cattle to settle the bank debt in full. Any suggestion of impropriety is a deliberate attempt to undermine that arrangement and force the property into foreclosure. Olivia stepped forward, finding courage in Thomas's words. My father did terrible things to this town. He betrayed your trust and stole your money. I can't change that, and I can't repay what he took, but I am not my father. Her clear voice carried to every corner of the room, compelling attention. I left Copper Creek 3 years ago because I couldn't bear the weight of your judgment for crimes I didn't commit. I've worked honestly ever since, building a life elsewhere. I returned only because my grandmother asked it of me in her final letter. She paused, emotion threatening to overwhelm her, but pushed forward. She believed in me when no one else did. She saw past my father's sins to the person I truly am. All I'm asking is the chance to honor her memory by settling this debt properly and deciding my future on my own terms. A heavy silence fell over the room as she finished speaking. Thornton moved to respond, but was interrupted by an elderly man rising slowly from his seat. I've heard enough, said Jacob Miller, the town's most respected citizen and owner of the general store. Walter, you're out of line. The girls made a good faith payment and arranged reasonable terms. If she and O'Malley want to harvest that wheat and sell those cattle to clear the debt, They deserve the chance. The bank has policies, Thornton began. The bank serves this community, Miller cut him off. Not the other way around, and this community has seen enough division and hard feeling. Mrs. Harper was a good woman who never harmed a soul. Her granddaughter deserves the chance to honor her memory properly. Murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. Thornton looked around, realizing that public opinion was shifting against him. Furthermore, Miller continued, these insinuations about Miss Norwood's character are beneath you, Walter. The girl's staying in her grandmother's house, which is her right. O'Malley's helping with the farm work, which is proper. Anything beyond that is not our business to speculate upon. Mayor Wilson, sensing the changing mood, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should put this to a vote. All those in favor of honoring the agreement made at the bank this morning, allowing Miss Norwood 30 days to settle the remainder of her debt, please signify by raising your hands. Hands rose throughout the room, not everyone, but a clear majority. Thornton's face darkened with anger and embarrassment as he observed the result. The community has spoken, Mayor Wilson declared. The agreement stands. As the meeting dissolved into smaller conversations, Olivia found herself surrounded by townspeople, some offering condolences for her grandmother's passing, others expressing support for her efforts to settle the debt honorably. It was a remarkable change from the isolation she'd felt since her return. Thomas remained by her side, a steady presence as they navigated the unexpected social interactions. When they finally emerged from the town hall into the cool evening air, Olivia felt lightheaded with relief and lingering adrenaline. Did that really just happen? She asked Thomas as they walked toward their horses. He smiled, the moonlight catching the planes of his face. It did. The town's starting to see you, Olivia. Not your father's shadow, but you. They're seeing you too, she pointed out. Standing up to Thornton took courage. It was overdue, Thomas replied. He's bullied this town for too long. A figure stepped from the shadows as they reached their horses, Thornton himself, his expression cold with fury. This isn't over, he stated flatly. You may have won tonight, but I have resources you can't imagine. It is over, Thornton, Thomas replied calmly. The town has spoken. Accept it with whatever grace you can muster. You think you know me, what I'm capable of. Thornton's voice held a dangerous edge. Both of you are outsiders here. Temporary victories don't change that. My grandmother was no outsider, Olivia replied, finding strength in the memory of the woman who had loved her unconditionally. This was her home for 60 years. She believed I belonged here, and for her sake, I'm willing to try and make it mine as well. Noble sentiments, Thornton sneered. We'll see how long they last when reality sets in. As he stalked away, Olivia felt a shiver of apprehension. He won't give up, will he? No, Thomas admitted, helping her mount her horse. But neither will we. The days that followed brought a flurry of activity. The wheat harvest began in earnest, with Thomas and the 2 hired men working from dawn until dusk to bring in the crop before autumn rains could damage it. Olivia worked alongside them, her hands blistering from unaccustomed labor, but her spirit strengthening with each passing day. To her surprise, several townspeople came to offer assistance. Miller's son brought his wagon to help transport the harvested wheat. Sheriff Reynolds's wife brought food for the workers, and even the preacher came to help for an afternoon, rolling up his sleeves and working in the field. Things are changing, Thomas observed one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. People are remembering who your grandmother was, what she meant to this community, and forgetting what my father did. Olivia asked, doubt in her voice. Thomas shook his head. Not forgetting, but separating you from his actions, seeing you for who you are. The wheat harvest yielded better than expected, bringing in just over $300 when sold. Combined with the cattle money and what remained of Olivia's grandmother's savings, they had more than enough to settle the bank debt completely. On the morning they were to make the final payment, Thomas arrived at the house earlier than usual. Olivia found him on the porch, hat in hands, and uncharacteristic nervousness about him. "Is something wrong?" she asked, concern threading her voice. "No," he assured her quickly. "Nothing's wrong, there's something I want to say before we go into town." Olivia's heart quickened at his serious tone. "What is it?" Thomas took a deep breath. "These past weeks, working with you, getting to know you, they've changed me, Olivia, changed how I see my future." "Thomas, please let me finish," he requested gently. "When I came to Copper Creek, I was running from my past, trying to build something that was just mine. I thought that was enough land, honest work, independence. I didn't realize how lonely that vision was until you came back to town." He stepped closer, his eyes meeting hers directly. "I know it's been a short time. I know there's still uncertainty ahead. But I need you to know that whatever happens today, whatever you decide to do after the debt is settled, stay in Copper Creek or go elsewhere, I want to be part of that future." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you," Thomas replied simply. "Not just your strength or your beauty, though both take my breath away. I love your heart, Olivia. The way you face each day with courage, the way you refuse to let this town's judgment define you." Tears blurred Olivia's vision. No man had ever spoken to her this way, with honesty and vulnerability rather than flattery or calculation. "You don't have to answer now," Thomas continued. "I know there's much to consider, but I wanted you to know before we close this chapter. Whatever you decide about your future, I hope you'll consider including me in it." Olivia reached for his hand, her fingers entwining with his. "Thomas, I've been afraid to admit what I was feeling. After my father, I promised myself I'd never trust easily again, never let myself be vulnerable. But you—" She paused, gathering courage. "You've shown me that there's strength in trust, in opening your heart to possibilities." Hope dawned in his eyes. "Does that mean it means I'm falling in love with you too?" she confirmed, her voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. "And whatever future we build here or elsewhere, I want to build it together." The kiss that followed was gentle at first, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened into something more profound, a promise, a beginning, a declaration without words. When they finally parted, both were breathless, their faces flushed with emotion and possibility. "We should go," Olivia said reluctantly. "The bank will be opening soon." Thomas nodded, though he seemed reluctant to release her hand. "One more thing to consider after we settle the debt. What do you want to do with the property? Will you stay in Copper Creek?" It was a question Olivia had been considering for days. Her initial plan had been simple: sell the property, use the money to start over somewhere new. But things had changed. She had changed. "I think my grandmother knew what she was doing when she asked me to come back," Olivia replied thoughtfully. "Not just to settle her affairs, but to reclaim a part of myself I left behind. I'd like to stay, at least for now, see if Copper Creek can truly become home again." The smile that lit Thomas's face was worth any uncertainty the decision might bring. "I'd hoped you might say that." Their arrival at the bank caused a small stir among the waiting customers. Word of the town meeting had spread, and many were curious to see the final resolution of the matter. Thornton was nowhere to be seen, but his chief clerk greeted them with unexpected politeness. "Miss Norwood, Mr. O'Malley, how may I help you today?" "We're here to settle the remainder of the debt on my grandmother's property," Olivia stated clearly, placing a canvas bag containing the money on the counter. The clerk nodded, producing the necessary paperwork. Mr. Thornton left instructions for this transaction. Once the debt is cleared, the property title will be released to you, and the lien on Mr. O'Malley's land will be removed. The process was surprisingly straightforward. The clerk counted the money carefully, issued receipts, and had Olivia sign several documents confirming the debt was paid in full. With each signature, Olivia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, not just the burden of the debt, but the shadow of her father's crimes that had haunted her for 3 years. "That concludes our business," the clerk announced, handing Olivia the final document, the clear title to her grandmother's property. "The property is now officially yours, Miss Norwood, free and clear of all encumbrances." "Thank you," Olivia replied, emotion thickening her voice as she accepted the document. As they left the bank, Thomas took her hand, squeezing it gently. "How does it feel to be truly free?" "Overwhelming," she admitted. "For so long, I've been defined by what my father did, by the judgment of others. Now," she looked around the town, seeing it with new eyes, "now I get to define myself." "And how would you define Olivia Norwood?" Thomas asked, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Olivia considered for a moment. A woman who returned to face her past and found her future instead. They walked through town toward their horses, hands still linked, ignoring the curious glances from passers-by. As they passed the general store, Jacob Miller emerged, raising a hand in greeting. "Miss Norwood, O'Malley, a moment if you please." They paused, waiting as the elderly shopkeeper approached. "I hear congratulations are in order, the debt's settled." "It is," Olivia confirmed. "The property is free and clear." "Excellent news," Miller said with genuine pleasure. "Actually, I wanted to discuss a business proposition with you both." "What kind of proposition?" Thomas asked. Miller gestured toward his store. "As you may know, I'm not getting any younger. Been thinking about cutting back my hours, maybe taking some time to visit my daughter in Denver. I need someone reliable to help manage the store, someone with good sense and a head for figures." He looked directly at Olivia. "Your grandmother mentioned once that you helped with the books at the mercantile where you worked back east. Said you had a knack for organization and numbers." Surprise rendered Olivia momentarily speechless. "She told you about that. We were friends for 50 years, Miller replied with a small smile. "She was proud of you, how you made your way after everything. Said you'd become a fine businesswoman." The validation from her grandmother, even secondhand, warmed Olivia's heart. "I appreciate that, Mr. Miller, and I'm flattered by your offer, but don't answer now," Miller interrupted. "Think it over. It would be part-time to start, 3 days a week. Might be a good way to re-establish yourself in the community." After Miller returned to his store, Olivia turned to Thomas, wonder in her expression. Did that really just happen? Did Jacob Miller, the most respected merchant in town, just offer me a job? "He did," Thomas confirmed, grinning. "And it's a smart move on his part. You are good with figures and honest as the day is long, exactly what his business needs." "It's more than that," Olivia realized. "It's acceptance, a place in the community." "The beginning of one," Thomas agreed. "What do you think? Will you accept?" Olivia considered the unexpected opportunity. "I think I will. Between that and the farm, I could build something here, something that's truly mine." Speaking of building, Thomas began, then hesitated. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about the future, about our future if you're willing." He guided her toward their horses, away from potential eavesdroppers on the busy street. "My property borders your grandmother's land. Together, they'd make a substantial holding, enough for a proper ranch eventually." Understanding dawned in Olivia's eyes. "Thomas O'Malley, are you proposing a business merger or something more personal?" "Both in time," he replied, a hint of nervousness beneath his smile. I'm not asking for immediate promises, Olivia, just possibilities. The chance to court you properly, to build something together, a life, a home, perhaps someday a family. Emotion welled in Olivia's chest, a mix of joy and lingering caution. I'd like that. The chance to see where this leads, to build something together. Thomas's smile could have lit the darkest night. Then that's where we'll begin. The weeks that followed brought gradual but steady changes. Olivia began working at Miller's store, her natural aptitude for business quickly proving her value. Customers who had once avoided her now engaged in friendly conversation, their initial suspicion giving way to respect for her competence and integrity. Thomas divided his time between his own property and Olivia's, beginning improvements that would eventually join the two holdings into a single, more efficient operation. Their courtship progressed with proper decorum: Sunday dinners after church, occasional rides through the countryside, quiet evenings on the porch watching the sunset. Thornton maintained a cold distance, his influence in town noticeably diminished after the public meeting. His daughter Melissa departed for Denver shortly thereafter, ostensibly to visit relatives, but more likely to escape the gossip that now surrounded her family rather than Olivia. As autumn deepened toward winter, Olivia found herself settling into a routine that felt increasingly like home. Her grandmother's house no longer echoed with absence, but instead filled with new memories: Thomas teaching her to play chess by the firelight, Sheriff Reynolds and his wife joining them for Thanksgiving dinner, the women of the church quilting circle gathering in her parlor. On Christmas Eve, snow fell gently over Copper Creek, transforming the town into a picturesque scene from a storybook. Thomas arrived at Olivia's house in the early evening, bearing gifts and evergreen boughs to decorate the mantel. "It's beautiful," Olivia said, admiring his handiwork as the pine scent filled the room. "Reminds me of Christmases when I was a girl." "Your grandmother had a way of making holidays special," Thomas remarked. "She invited me for Christmas dinner last year, you know. Said no one should be alone on Christmas." She was right about that, Olivia agreed, thinking how different this Christmas was from the previous one, when she'd been alone in a boarding house in another town, mourning her grandmother's passing. They settled by the fire, exchanging modest gifts: a hand-knitted scarf from Olivia, a leather-bound journal from Thomas. As the evening grew late, Thomas seemed to grow increasingly nervous, checking his pocket repeatedly. "Is everything all right?" Olivia finally asked. "You seem distracted." "Not distracted," Thomas corrected. "Just waiting for the right moment." He took a deep breath, then reached for her hand. "Olivia, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Getting to know you, working beside you, watching you reclaim your place in this community, it's been a privilege." He reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box that made Olivia's heart race. "I know we agreed to take things slowly, to give ourselves time, but my feelings have only grown stronger with each passing day. I love you, Olivia Norwood. I love your strength, your kindness, your determination to forge your own path regardless of what others might think." Opening the box, he revealed a simple but elegant ring, a small diamond flanked by 2 sapphires. "This was my mother's. She made me promise I'd only give it to a woman who was truly worthy of it, a woman I could build a life with, a future." Kneeling before her, Thomas's eyes held hers with steady certainty. "Olivia Norwood, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears blurred Olivia's vision as emotion overwhelmed her. The journey that had brought her to this moment, from the scandal of her father's betrayal, through years of lonely exile, to her reluctant return to Copper Creek, seemed suddenly purposeful, each painful step leading her exactly where she was meant to be. "Yes," she whispered, Then more strongly, "Yes, Thomas, I would be honored to be your wife." The kiss that sealed their engagement was a promise of all that was to come: partnership, respect, love that had been tested by adversity and emerged stronger for the challenges they had faced together. As Thomas slipped the ring onto her finger, Olivia thought of her grandmother's final letter, the hope expressed that she might find peace in Copper Creek. She had found that, and so much more. She had found home. Spring brought the wedding, a modest but joyful affair in the white-steepled church, where generations of Copper Creek residents had marked life's most significant moments. Olivia wore a gown of ivory satin, simple but elegant, with lace at the collar that had once adorned her mother's wedding dress. Thomas stood tall and handsome at the altar, his usual rugged appearance softened by a new suit and the tender expression in his eyes as Olivia walked toward him. The church was full not just with the curious, but with people who had come to genuinely wish them well. Miller gave Olivia away, a paternal figure who had become a true friend. Sheriff Reynolds and his wife sat in the front row, beaming with approval. As they exchanged vows, Olivia felt her grandmother's presence not as a ghost, but as a continuing influence, a blessing that had guided her back to Copper Creek at precisely the right moment to find healing and love. "I, Thomas, take you, Olivia, to be my lawfully wedded wife." Thomas spoke the words clearly, his voice steady with certainty. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." Olivia repeated the vows, meaning each word with all her heart. As the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, she felt a circle completing not just in her own life, but in the life of the town. The whispers that had once followed her with suspicion and judgment had transformed into murmurs of approval and genuine good wishes. The reception at the town hall brought further evidence of their acceptance. Women who had once crossed the street to avoid speaking to Olivia now brought dishes for the celebration table and offered sincere congratulations. Men who had doubted Thomas's judgment in associating with the thief's daughter now clapped him on the shoulder and wished him happiness. Even Thornton made a brief appearance, his manner stiff but correct as he offered formal congratulations before departing. His influence in town had waned significantly since the public meeting, with rumors suggesting he might sell the bank and move east. As evening approached and the celebration continued, Thomas drew Olivia outside for a moment of privacy in the spring twilight. "Happy, Mrs. O'Malley?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. "When I came back to Copper Creek, I never imagined this is where I'd end up." "Your grandmother might have," Thomas suggested with a smile. "She had a way of seeing possibilities others missed." "She saw the good in you when you first arrived," Olivia agreed. "Just as she believed in me when no one else would." "She was right about both of us," Thomas said softly, "about the people we could become if given the chance." As they stood together in the gathering dusk, Olivia reflected on the path that had led her to this moment. The whispers about her past, her father's crimes, her supposed complicity had nearly broken her once, but they had also led her back to Copper Creek, back to her grandmother's legacy, and ultimately to Thomas. "They whispered about the past I couldn't change," she mused, leaning into her husband's embrace. "But the past isn't what matters now." Thomas's arms tightened around her. "You've changed enough for me, Olivia. Who you are today, your strength, your heart, that's what I fell in love with. That's what matters." Their lips met in a kiss that held both promise and fulfillment, the beginning of a shared future built on understanding, respect, and love that had been tested by adversity and emerged stronger for the challenges they had faced together. As twilight deepened into evening, they returned to the celebration, hand in hand, ready to embrace whatever the future might bring. The whispers of the past had faded, replaced by the clear, certain knowledge that they belonged to this place, to this community, and most of all to each other.